There he is. Woo! How's it going, dude?
All right. How you doing?
Living the dream.
Yeah. You guys awake over there?
Barely. So for the uninitiated, could you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Matthew J. Casale, and I am the organizer and creator of Assembly Required, the Asheville Designer Toy Expo.
Nice. And you were an artist, a resident artist as well, correct?
Yes.
And so how did that start for you?
It's a long story, which probably you don't have time for, but I discovered it a couple years ago, probably in like 2015, 2016. And I think it was on Instagram, and started following the artists, seeing what they were doing. Wondered why the hell I wasn't doing it. Wondered where they had been all my life, and sort of said that's what I want to be doing. I want to be doing designer toys, and I just dove in head first.
Wow. And then have you been an artist your whole life? Have you always been doing creative stuff?
Yeah. I've been sculpting since I was little. I've been always an artist. I think I went to art school in the 90s in Philadelphia. I was a filmmaker then, and I got a BFA in film, and didn't really take the sculpture aspect seriously. That was always a hobby. And then jumped down the road a couple years later, moved to Asheville, North Carolina, started a family, and sort of put my art aside, made my family my priority, raising my little boy. And once he got up and started toddling around and was independent, I jumped into the back room and started up my art desk again, cleaned it off. I got the blessing from my wife to start being creative again, and it was quite the experience. So I came back into it, being a sculptor previously, and thought, how do I want to come back into this? How do I want to reestablish myself as an artist? And that's when I just discovered the designer toy culture and discovered resin art. I had always wanted to mold my stuff because my stuff was always one-offs. They were always sculptures, singular sculptures. So I always wanted to get into the molding aspect of it. So once I started seeing the materials that they were using and how they were doing it, I just knew that I was sort of meant to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then how does the crazy idea of making a designer toy convention in Asheville like come into your mind and say, like, I'm an artist, I'm trying to pursue my art career, I have an idea, I'm going to start my own convention?
Well, quite literally, it was actually the thought was almost the moment I realized that I wanted to start producing resin art and become a design toy artist. I thought to myself, well, down here in the South, there's nothing. In Asheville, North Carolina, there's not really a presence here. And everybody knows about 5 Points, who's in the scene. Everybody knows about DCON, who's in the scene, but that's it. And once I started to realize how new this turn of the century art movement was, and how it is really just starting, and people are just starting to realize it and recognize it, I thought to myself, well, Asheville, North Carolina, it's a very artsy town. It's got its own subculture. And I was like, wow, they love their festivals here. So I thought to myself, I was like, wow, it's just a matter of time before somebody does that here in Asheville. That would be really cool. And I was like, well, who would do that?
That should be me.
That was pretty much the internal dialogue I had. I was like, you know what? If somebody should do it, it's probably me. Yeah, I should fucking do that before somebody else does it. And then as soon as I did it, everybody else coming out of the woodwork was like, oh, I was about to do that. Oh, I was totally going to do that.
Well, I mean, every artist that was at the show just said they had this like amazing time. So what was the turnout like? Like the people who attended, were how many of like the uninitiated like showed up like just to
Oh
see
my
what was
gosh.
going on?
That was the most incredible part
Mhm.
was because the in essence, you know, to give the Southeast a presence, to give the artists another platform to show and sell their work, to get the information out there that this is a thing that exists and teach the public about it, having people that had no idea walking through the door,
Mm.
like just seeing, if you remember the first time you like came across this stuff, I remember the first time I came across it, to
Mhm.
see that expression on somebody else's face. They come in, they're like, what? They're like looking around like, what is this? And it's like, just go in and find out, you know, just
Right.
go ahead, just walk through. And then they come back and they're like, I've never heard of this. What? Like they just are so excited and so amped up. And that's part of the amazing feeling about doing this is like, yes, it is really cool. It's really exciting to see what all these creative people are doing, and more people should know about this to buy their work so they can, well, hopefully make a living out of it. But that's tough.
Right. Um, yeah, and we deal with that a lot because when we set up at a convention and even San Diego Comic Con, where pretty people kind of know about stuff, or do New York, not so much at DCON, but there's always people who walk up to the booth. They don't. There's some people who absolutely just don't know what they're looking at.
Right.
Right? They just look at it and they're like, "Are these toys that I missed in the store? Is this
Right.
real?" And then
Right.
I was like, "No, these are all handmade." And da da da. And you can just see the eyes open up, like, and you can tell the best feeling, and I think you know from experience, is watching that conversion in
Yeah.
their mind,
Yeah.
and they see something and it clicks and they're like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, I have to have this. And then
Right.
the wallet opens up and it's
Mm-hmm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
slow motion. It's like dun 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 dun
Yeah.
dun, and then it's like you make that connection, and then they're like, they have just had their this like experience of like action figure or as art, or like
It's
designer
euphoric.
toy
It's
as art. Yeah,
euphoric. It's
it's
euphoric. It's you know, one of the amazing things about you know, the experience is when it clicks, when they realize what's going on. And the first thing is, it's like, well, then it's not really a toy, is it? And you're like, no, no, it's not. It's not really a toy. It's a sculpture. It's a resin sculpture, or it's a wooden sculpture, depending on the medium. But the important part of that word designer toy is the first word, designer. All
right.
these guys handmade these things. All these ladies here that are producing worked tirelessly. And being an artist, you know, I know the ups and downs of that. And it's a blessing and it's a curse. You know, it's a pleasure and it's a great experience. But also there's a downside to it, because it's like getting things just to work sometimes, making sure the pressure pot is properly pressurized. I had a buddy that came over just the other day just to watch me work. And I spent the first hour and a half just, just troubleshooting my pressure pot, because something came, it was working fine for weeks. For weeks it was working fine. And then he came over, and then I had to like washing the seal and cleaning things out, making sure everything's sealing right. But and when shit like that goes wrong, it's like, oh my God, why do I do this? Why do I put myself through this? But when it works, and it's really cool when it does.
Nice. So tell me, now you have plans for a post-COVID inspired show. Can you
Hmm.
talk about that and how that's going to work?
Yeah, well, it's called Virtually Assembled, an assembly required experience. I've been talking with, well, I reached out to Mr. Blank and Figure Fetish early on, because
Mhm.
they've been, you know, close to the assembly for years and participating since the onset of it. And I reached out to those guys, and because Mux is doing the Joker TV, and he's got the
Right.
designer toy market going. I was like, look, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this in 21, unless we do it virtually. And half the response was, I don't want to be in a virtual event. I don't really have to. And I was like, well, then let's make it interesting.
Mhm.
So those who wouldn't typically want to be in a virtual event, let's make it interesting so they would want to be in it. So quite honestly, you know, Ben went the QVC route, and
Mhm.
you know, I saw Pop Shop live. You know, I toyed around with it, and heard you cursing about it earlier. Um, I thought you were just gonna walk off the set, but you know, and that's an avenue.
Mm,
Assembly Required has never been about, you know, uh, it's been about bringing the artist to you and giving you an experience
mm,
with these artists. So the experience that we decided that we were going to come up with was really an entertaining one. We've got entertainment. We're not just going to sit there and talk about toys for 2 days.
mhm,
I mean, we're going to talk about toys. We've got exclusives. We've
mhm.
got all the artists are producing toy commercials. I see you got chicken burger chicken disco. I always
Chicken
get that
burger
wrong.
disco. Yeah.
Yeah, CBD, right? And I know that he actually, in a couple of ways, came from, you know, you sent him to Mr. Blank and
Uh-huh,
Joker TV, and that's how I saw his stuff.
uh-huh.
And then I saw his stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, you need to be involved. There he is. And I was like, you need to be involved with this. You know, he's working with, if some of the artists need some support with their commercials,
Mhm,
he's made himself available to do that. He's also participating in the event, and we're going to be talking about toys. We're going to have a Toy Box Theater. I don't know if you're familiar with Toy Box out on the West Coast.
no. Toy
No,
box. Is
okay.
that something specific? What is it?
Toy Box is America's favorite cartoon witch. You have to do
Wow.
a little research on that. I'll send you some information, but Toy Box is really great. He's a local performer here in Asheville,
Um,
and incorporate. He usually does our after party.
is he better
Um,
than me when I'm doing voices with chicken nuggets?
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's okay. I'm not offended.
Maybe if you had like some strings and some music and really
Yeah,
went to,
like production
it
value.
was a
If I
higher
was
production value. Yeah, yeah,
trained, if I
yeah.
was actually funny. Yeah,
Yeah,
we get.
a
I
little
get
bit.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So we're putting on a real show,
That's good.
and we've got segments, and we've got a lot of, like I said, Toy Box is got segments, and Figure Fetish and Mr. Blank are co-hosting it with me.
Mhm.
And we're really, we want to make it entertaining. We don't want people to be bored of sitting in front of a computer, or just watching, you know, the same old same old.
Sure. Or boring interviews.
Well, you know, quite honestly, you know,
That
I
was a
watched.
joke.
No. You the last couple DKE cons that you did.
Mhm,
You know, I was painting, I'm pouring resin while I've got you on in the background, and I'm listening
mhm.
to the interviews, and it was really, really inspiring and really cool. And when we initially started talking about it, I was like, look, I love what Dove's doing. I love it. I love it. You know, I
I
just want to
mean,
talk to artists.
sure. I mean, the interviews are fine, and because it's a for a short period of time, and we record them and put them on YouTube, and we're kind of like documenting the scene and all the people involved in a way. Um, I guess the trouble I have is like the in between.
Sure. You mean
It's like
playing with the
the
chicken nugget? You don't think that's entertaining?
yeah, I don't know.
Singing girl from Ipanema and checking your email, you don't think that's entertaining?
No, I think you're going to do a better job. But I've also made this ridiculous commitment of like, it started with San Diego. It's like, um, we were on an episode of Toy Geeks, and everyone's talking about what's going to happen with COVID, and this is terrible. There's going to be no conventions. And then my wife is like, "Oh, we're going to do it in the warehouse, and we're going to say, no." First, she said we're going to do it at our house. I said no, we're going to do it at the warehouse, and then she just said we're going to be set up for 5 days, and then that was just it. Like we just kept San Diego convention hours. Like we were there like Wednesday from 5 to 9, and every other day from 10 in the morning till 7 at night. And they just filled up the time with interviews, and people just were working and just hung out. But then after, then we did New York Comic Con for 4 days and this for 3 days. And then I'm just, I got nothing.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, well, it was definitely progressed. I've seen now you've got segments going on so you can like take naps and eat and stuff.
Well, the first one was terrible. I
I,
scheduled it
I
like an
know.
idiot. And it's like, I need to eat. I need to like, yeah, it was so good this year. I went like and took a nap in the other room. You know, it was great. Can never do that at San Diego. San Diego.
Well, quite honestly, the inspiration that DKECon was for Assembly Required was the realization that we need to cut to something so
Mhm.
we can eat
Right.
the simple things.
Yeah. Well, good for you for actually going out there and thinking about what other people had done as opposed to me who just said, "Yeah, we'll just do this." And it was even more like Sarah who just announced that we're doing this. I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then it just became a thing. And it's cool. And when I think the one benefit for us is that when conventions actually come back, I think we've decided we're not going to do New York Comic Con anymore, and we're going to do DKECon in March, um, and then that will be hopefully when the world gets back to normal, the one time where we do this a year,
Hmm.
and then we do two regular conventions the
So you're
rest of the
just
year.
going to do this once a year moving forward after this?
Well, I seem to think there's going to be no conventions next year.
Uh,
That is my take on it. I've spoken to some people who know concert promoters, and the bottom line at the currently, from what I understand, is there are no insurance companies that will insure any large gatherings.
hmm, that's interesting.
And even because it's just going to take one person to
Yeah.
sue a sports team or a band or whatever and just say, I got COVID at your thing. And it's like,
Well, that's interesting you say that because even though in my discovery of the designer toy culture and creating this, it's always been I've had a full-time job up until
mhm,
7 months ago. I
mhm,
worked in the hotel industry for 25 plus years. I worked for the technology companies that put on the big events.
mhm,
So there are no longer big events. So
right.
I've been furloughed from my full-time job since March. So the going virtual in February is also sort of helpful only in that I was able to um, I was able to, for the most part, bankroll Assembly Required for the first couple of years.
Mhm.
I knew how to create an event. I knew how to execute an event. I just didn't, the hardest part of that was just getting the artists,
Mhm.
and I had
But
the rest of it.
didn't seem like you had a hard time getting artists though. I mean, it seemed
I
like
had been planting a seed for years before that, and I had the
mhm,
help of many artists who were not only interested in being there, but we've
mhm,
got a lot here in the southeast, like Figure Fetish Magitarius, Dane's down here,
mhm,
Demarc's Toys. We've got a lot of artists in the south here. Fioned,
mhm,
um, George is not that far off, So a lot of people were interested in seeing a new event of this type pop
sure.
up in the country, and it being in their backyard because some of those artists have never traveled to New York or don't even have intentions of going out west to decon.
Right. And nor should they stay home.
Well, now you can.
It's a shit show.
We're
But
bringing it
I
to you.
mean, um, I guess the all the feedback that I got about the assembly required shows was, I mean, most people, I'll put it this way, most people I know who have gotten into the show promoting business, like the first time they do it, it's just a complete unorganized shit show. Just absolute chaos. There's one key thing that they didn't plan on or didn't know. It's like there's always something that goes horribly awry. It's like, oh, they decided not to pay for air conditioning. It's like, and then people talk about this show. It happens in LA. There was a cat show. It's called CatCon, right?
For real.
10,000, yeah, 10,000 people showed up to CatCon. Well, the promoters didn't pay for air conditioning, right? And so everyone was in this basement of this hotel, and they were all just like dripping sweat. It was just,
Oh,
it's like, can you imagine? it sounds
No,
ridiculous to you
no.
as someone who is like a veteran of events. Like the look on your face just says like,
Yeah.
what idiots. But you can imagine that most people that start conventions
Right.
are not trained in the
Sure.
art of a
Right.
convention.
Right.
They just learn by doing.
Yeah.
And from what I could tell, CatCon got a lot of traction. It wasn't a toy show. It was just about crafts and cats. And, you know, I don't know what, I didn't go, but I'm glad I didn't go. I mean, she just sold shirts that said like, I have a cat allergy or something like that. Would have been funny. I don't know. So I just have to commend you on that. Like everyone came away from those experiences and were just like, that was, they want to go back.
I hope so.
And that's,
I want to go back too.
Yeah, I mean,
22.
Yeah. So we hope.
Yeah, I think you know, one of the have you ever been up to 5 Points?
No.
No. That's, you know, that's
for us, I would love to be there. But I mean, I'm just right now I'm pulling away from New York Comic Con, and that was barely worth it. Because what we're doing in selling things that look like action figures, the benefit for us is that it crosses over to regular toy collectors.
right.
It's not, we're even at Designer Con, we're still kind of on the fringes, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Not what I used to do, you know, when we were a designer toy distributor and distributing for 500 companies, like Designer Con was our place. That was 100% our crowd. And then as we drifted into, you know, the action figures genre, or artists expressing themselves in an action figure medium, that doesn't translate to all the people who are buying vinyl toys. Some people are just not into that, or they specifically got out of that and got into designer toys, and this has taken them back in that kind of direction. So
Right.
we kind of need that mainstream crowd. But you know, the issue of us doing 5 Points, or you know, even doing your show, is that it's gonna cost the same. You know, the flights out there are roughly the same. New York's a little more expensive. The freight of my stuff out there and back, you know, however 4 or 5 nights in a hotel. Yeah, New York is just a little bit more expensive, but it's still in a range where I have to go out there and still sell 20 grand worth of stuff to break even, kind of deal.
Sure.
And that's not, that was hard at Designer Con until recently, if that makes sense. And the only reason we could do Designer Con is because it was literally in our backyard. And I used to drive there every day. Now that it's in Orange County, like, you know, it's like I can pays to get a hotel room, but not to drive back and forth, you know, an hour and a half each way. But you know, the expenses involved with doing what we do just precludes just getting a van and loading up the van and like getting on the road and doing stuff like that. And so that's been difficult, and we've been, you know, had our ass handed to us many times, like when we try to, like, I mean, your show would be perfect for this, but I've tried to take this to mainstream toy shows. Like LA Comic Con calls me every year, right? We did a toy show in Vegas, and it was supposed to be a complete vintage toy show. Ian's looking at me laughing, like, I mean, that was horrible, right? You know, as people come up, oh, that's cool. They take a photo and they just walk away.
Right.
And, you know, it's like I mean, it couldn't have been worse. Like, you know, people walk up to you, they think, I mean, I don't know, I just can't describe it. Our price point is, those people are there for a Funko Pop, an autograph, and a free poster of a wrestler or whatever. And you know, you show them this action figure that's $50 or $100, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
Oh, well, someone made that by hand. It was like, why would they do that? It's like, never mind.
Right. Yeah. So, that's not the target audience.
Yeah, so our audience is a very small niche, and it works at San Diego in particular because all the industries are there. You know, the animation industry, the video game, comic book, toy, television, um, and those people who are in those industries are fans of this. And the average person on the street just doesn't like. They're like, "What?"
Right, right. Well,
You know?
you know, I still find to this day, you know, when I'm talking, somebody asks me about the event or somebody asks me what I do, and you know, say, you know, designer toys, you know, I run assembly required, and they go, what's the what? Then the toy, what? And then I go,
Right.
okay, let me back up a second. So what's your favorite toy? And you go, oh, blah, 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 Star Wars. Okay, so you know, some design toy artists will take those characters that you like, break them all up, and it's called kit bashing. And I just start going off on a tangent, and
Right.
I could just see them go. "Mm." And sometimes
Right.
it's a good response. And then
Mhm.
after I get done talking, they go, "That sounds cool," or
Right.
they're still staring at me, and they're like, "I Can you
Right.
go back to the part where they break up the toys? What do they?" And they're in boxes, but you can't open the box. What? I don't get that. And I'm like, okay, well, you're not our audience. That's fine. I get it.
Yeah, it is an audience that has definitely, I mean, there's some people who come to it from scratch, but they've usually like matured into it. You know, they started collecting Spawn figures and then they just got burnt, right? But they like the Spawn figures better than the rest because of the paint jobs, because of the
Hmm.
detail, because they saw that there was an artist there, but they couldn't put their finger on it. But that just became a mass of plastic. And then, you know, they wander into designer toys or they recognize an artist that they know who has made something. And then it just kind of clicks like, oh, there's an artist's personality imbued in this piece. It's not this generic licensed product that, you know, all those companies that work for Hasbro and Mattel, those are artists too, but they're all, it's not the same. It's not an artist's vision that is being put out. It is, you know, the licensee's vision that artists are hired to make happen. If that, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think that you know, one of the amazing things about you know, the whole culture and what you've got behind you, you know, when it
Mhm.
comes to the boxes, even the boxes, like, you know, my work, I don't focus on the boxes, just personally, but you know, maybe I'll go down that route someday. But you know, growing up, you know, I had my dad bought me. I keep trying to tell my dad that assembly required is basically, you know, is in honor of him. You know, he's the one that bought all that shit for me. It's his fault, is what I tell him. I said, this is you created this, Dad. And thankfully, you know, he is still with us. And, you know, I moved him down to Asheville a couple years ago, and I brought him to the first event and I walked him through it. And I was like, none of this would be possible if not for you. You know,
Uh-huh.
you bought me all those Star Wars figures and all those GI Joe figures and everything that was a 3 3/4 growing up. I had because of him. But my dad did what nobody else did: is he took the box and
Uh-huh.
he cut the bubble
Yeah.
and hung the box on the wall. I had wall to wall all the boxes, and I would take the characters out. I was the only kid in the on the block in the world that I knew that had
Uh-huh.
all the boxes. And I would take the thing out and I'd play with it and I'd put it back in the box.
So did he
And
just, he cut the back of the cards? You could
no, no,
put
no,
it
no, he
back
cut
in
the
it?
top of the bubble, the top
The
of the
top of the
bubble,
bubble.
and I would
Nice.
slide it out. So when we sold the entire set, was when I got married, to put towards the wedding. And sold the entire set of Star Wars. I had pretty much everything, you know, every figure, just about every vehicle, in box, like quote unquote,
Uh-huh.
because it was hanging on a wall covered in dust and broken apart. But still,
Right.
nobody even had that. Nobody was saving that stuff. And
So
he sold it all.
when he walked into the show, I mean, did he get
He got it to a certain extent.
it?
And I think it's only because of his age is
I-
the
I'm
lacking part.
I'm laughing because I identify like
I mean,
two, t-
he knows the toys. He knows I'm a
yeah.
sculptor. He knows the two worlds collide. He was there for the entire, you know, experience of me growing up. But like he his olfact, his he's not as receptive as he used to be, and
Sure.
so I think he got it, and that was enough.
Nice. So where does it go from here?
Well, a successful virtual event in February, February 6th and 7th. We'll be streaming it on our website, um, and assembly-required.net. And hopefully after that, we'll return to normalcy and return to an in-person event. I'll have an announcement as to where that will be in February, because we used to host it at Highland Brewery.
Mhm. And with this all, the world gets back to some sense of normalcy and the hotel industry comes calling, but this has developed into, something viable. Are you going back?
If this is developed into something viable, hell no.
So this is the goal. Like if you could do this.
Well, quite, I pretty much apologize to a lot of people and say and I'm partially responsible for COVID, because a couple of years ago, I put it out into the universe. I want to quit the hotel industry and I want to become a designer toy artist and run this event.
And therefore COVID is your fault.
And just like those horror movies where you open up a genie bottle and you ask for something, but you don't think about how it's going to happen. So I'm sorry.
Right. So
this is how it happened.
So you already have the experience of, having a job that pays the bills, and then being a sculptor, doing something that inspires you in your off time. It reminds me of like what my mom said to me when I was young. She said, "You turn all your hobbies into businesses. What do you do for fun?" And I was like,
yeah.
didn't have a real good response for that one. I still don't. But it's kind of like I used the example earlier of like a doctor who, becomes the head of his or her department, and then it's, eventually like the person running a hospital is a doctor, right? And then that person like doesn't ever see a patient. They don't do. It's just people who are in jobs, teachers, right, who get into a job, to teach because they love the interaction, they love to, inspire children, and then they become a principal, and then they become a superintendent, and then they've gotten about as far away from what they originally wanted to do. So, I mean, so I guess the question is like, is the convention like the ultimate goal, or would you? I guess if you had the magic genie come out of the bottle and you had the option to just make money doing art and not a convention, would you rather that happen?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, my wife is an essential worker. So the back office is now her office, which used to be my studio. So now my studio is the living room. It doesn't look good out there. But it is what it is. You know what? We're making do with what we can,
Sure.
and we're making it work. And I've started producing more work, and I've started selling more pieces. And yeah, and my wife sees that and she goes, "Oh, okay. There's you're making some money there. It's not 1/3 as much as what I used to do, but
Sure.
it's what I love to do. So I just going down that rabbit hole. I just got to remember that I can't forget what I love about doing it. And once you start doing it for the wrong reasons, that's when you start to lose that inspiration. So I just got to keep remembering I'm doing this for me first. Even producing this work, I produce what I want to produce. I'm not trying to produce something that I wouldn't naturally want to make just to make money. Otherwise I'd slap Boba Fett heads on everything. But
like everybody else. Yes.
But I'm trying some new stuff. I'm
offense to any of those people.
No. But I'm just hey now. Now the chat's blowing up.
Uh-oh, now you did it.
Now I've done it. No, but the Suck Lord said it. You know, he was at the first assembly required, and he gave half his presentation was about exactly that, the Boba Fett. You know, going the routes of the Boba Fetts, and you know, Battle Babies was there, and Suck Lord was like, you know, and that was the only, you know, at the time Battle Babies, and I know he worked with another artist on it. I don't remember at the time right now what the other artist's name was.
Junk Fed?
Junk Fed, probably. Yeah, those two are tight. You know, it was Boba Fett yawning. Tired of Fett, maybe.
Right. Yeah. What was it called?
Bored of Fett. Yeah, Bored of Fett. That
yeah.
makes so much more sense. Yeah, and Sugler was like, yeah, that was good, you know, because that in of itself was mocking the overuse of the Boba Fett. Right.
Or regurgitated ideas.
Yeah, and I love that. It's a great way to take advantage of it and yet mock it.
And then Rika's most recent low-hanging fruit. And it's got like stormtroopers for the grapes.
No, it's great.
It's funny because it's sort of a criticism of himself as well. Like he's not, you know, free from criticism, but yeah, it puts it into perspective though.
They get it.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, it's been a pleasure. I thank you so much for the time. We wish you all the best of luck in February with the show. We're really
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Dove. Everything you do.
And appreciate you. I mean, you're you know, you're fighting the good fight, like in the South. That's
and then one of these days we'll just have to get you out here to Asheville.
One day. Might like to visit, probably wouldn't stay.
That's fine.
Maybe I'll just retire to Asheville.
There you go.
I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, thank you again for the time. Good luck with everything. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.
All right. Take care.